So everybody is a part of the team. Always ask for help. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask your resource nurse, ask your charge nurse if you're feeling like you might be behind, and ask ahead of time. Don't let things linger. And so, that's going to keep everything on task. It's safer for the patients. Just go ahead. If you feel like, I'm going to be in here doing something for a while, go ahead and ask, someone out at the nurse's station if they can keep an eye out, if they can keep an ear out for your other critical patient. Listen out for the ventilators, the IV pumps, because they could be level-fed running. It could be something that's like, vital to keeping them alive. Listen out for the bed alarms. Listen out for the cardiac monitors. Just ask for help. And so that's the only thing that I would say about teamwork. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
I'm Jenny Finnell, CRNA and founder of CRNA School Prep Academy. I have always had a passion for helping those who aspire to become a CRNA. A couple of years ago, I started mentoring a handful of prospective students. Fast forward to today, and I have a successful mentoring program that has impacted hundreds of aspiring and now current nurse anesthesia students. What I enjoy the most in my business is connecting with you, the future CRNA. I love learning and growing with you. The road to CRNA is full of unique challenges, and no two journeys are the same. But every journey has a learning opportunity. I'm here to share what I have learned over the years from not just my students, but CRNA community leaders, program faculty, and from my time as a practicing CRNA. This will be your one-stop shop to get the mentoring you need to not only guide you into this career path, but support you all the way through to graduation day. So if you're a nursing student who's exploring the possibility, an ICU nurse actively pursuing CRNA, or a current nurse anesthesia student, you're in the right place. Tune in for inspiration and actionable takeaways that will help you from start to finish. Let's get started. All right, welcome everyone back to an episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Finnell, and today we're going to be talking about time management in the ICU, and we have a very special guest, Shakira, who has been an ICU nurse for 8 years, 7 of which were spent in the ICU. She has a pretty extensive background that I'll briefly cover with you guys, but level 1 trauma center. Looks like she's done trauma, post cardiac surgery, stroke, STEMIs, cabbages, COVID patients, DKA, ARDS, and she's also dabbled in ICU travel nursing, and she's been a preceptor in the ICU for 5 years now. So she's very well versed with helping new ICU nurses, whether they're new grads or just new to the ICU, be successful in ICU nursing. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. So I would love for you to share why you're passionate about mentoring ICU nurses. Kind of how did this start for you?
Absolutely. So I myself had a difficult transition as I worked in med-surg first, and then I transitioned over to ICU. And so it was a whole nother world for me, and I didn't feel confident there. And so I just wish that I had more mentoring and more support. And so even as a nursing student, in critical care rotation, everything was so scary back then, of just feeling very overwhelmed. And so that's the reason why I'm offering mentoring services to nursing students and nurses who want to transition to ICU. Awesome. Just helping with their confidence. Yeah.
So that is interesting to me because we actually have a lot of people who are pursuing CRNA who maybe feel down in the dumps about starting the med-surg. And I always say that, no, you're gaining skills by working in med-surg. Yes, they are vastly different than ICU, but you're still bringing something to the table. Could you maybe speak on
Absolutely.
That as far as how did your med-surg help you transition into the ICU role?
I would say the most thing that med-surg helped me with was time management, because, there you have 6 patients sometimes, depending on what state you're in. And so you get this flow down, these tasks down, and you get your flow of being a nurse and how you should do things throughout your 12-hour shift.
Awesome. No, and that's we're talking about time management today. So that's perfect. So I guess when you you kind of made the transition into the ICU, with time management being kind of your strong point, I guess, how did you find yourself using those skills to kind of help you in the ICU kind of from the get-go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had already established checklists and things like that, and doing things like bedside report, which saves so much time in ICU. And if I could expand on that right now, I'd love to. So one of the most efficient ways to save time and have good time management in the ICU is giving bedside report. And what I mean by that is you get to lay eyes on your patient. And so essentially you're already doing your assessment before you start your head to toe assessment. And that's just one of the things. And then another thing is you get to clarify things with the offgoing nurse rather than looking things up later, which would take a lot of time from you. Yes, that's one of my favorite things to do. And then you get to complete your skin check with that nurse. So you're already completing your integumentary system part of the assessment. So you don't have to go back and do that again if both of you are already at the bedside, rather than standing outside at the nurse station and getting a report. Then you have to go back and clarify things. Another example is like when you're writing down the bed settings. If you look over there when you're at the bedside and see if it's at where they say it's at. And if it's not, just clarify like, hey, did something happen overnight? Why is the oxygen or the FiO2 higher or whatever? So, you go ahead and figure that out and get your day started. And doing things like completing your drip handoff at the bedside. And so that is going to save you a lot of time because you want to verify your weight and everything. So there's no confusion or no medication errors later. Yeah. And so, like little things like that, even like updating your whiteboard, like small things like that, like things that your manager will come by when you're busy and they'll say, did you do this? Right. Do that at the bedside, get it out the way. You don't have to worry about it later. You don't have to worry about people like coming up to you later and doing it. Those are just some little things. And like my report sheet coming from med-surg, I knew I had to create some type of organization to succeed in the ICU. So I have like these boxes on my report sheet, neuro, cardiac, respiratory, just like that, keep me organized. And then at the bottom of my report sheet, I have all the tasks that I have to complete during my 12-hour shift and check those off, as the day goes. So you're not getting behind, you know what time it should be done. I'm not thinking about, did I do it? I'm not staying late charting. Yeah. So little things like that is what I kind of like gathered from going from med-surg to ICU.
Okay. So did you make this report sheet yourself or you did?
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I offer it to the nurses and students that I mentor. Oh, yeah, I can send it to you.
Maybe we can get that. We can, link to that, you guys, to get that resource. That is great. One thing that I remember doing way back when was, especially because I always felt like for us, like orders were always one of those really touchy points where, especially like new orders that came in that were for day shift that got put in overnight. I remember that was really important to clarify on my handoff that this is what's expected coming up in your shift. And that was always a courtesy thing. Like, hey, be on the lookout for this. They put these orders in at 2 a.m. or whenever they did their nighttime rounds. But it's not on my shift, it's on your shift. Because it's so easy then you get flooded with orders during the day and it's so easy to lose track of what's coming up. But I love that organization piece and writing, like having kind of a checkbox of, okay, I've done this, I've done this.
Yeah, I'm definitely a list person. So if you're a list person, that's going to be good for you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. So I guess,
absolutely.
How do you mention kind of checking off and checklists and things, but do you group your tasks together that kind of save you time that you feel that you would be willing to talk about?
Absolutely. So cluster care, I love clustering my care. So for example, if you're in there at 8 o'clock, you can give the 9 o'clock meds at 8 o'clock. And then you can go ahead and start getting ready for rounds, which is going to be at 9:15. So, just clustering care at 8 o'clock when you're in there, reposition, do your oral care, check your skin under the restraints, document. You can document your assessment while you're at the bedside. You can even print your strips from the bedside. Some facilities allow that. So you can do all of that while you're in the room. Let's say at between 8 and 8:15. You can do all of that and then move on to the next phase of the day, which will be rounds.
Yeah. How do you find yourself? Because rounds, I remember for me at least, especially when I was new. And as I progressed, they didn't intimidate me. But in the beginning, they were really intimidating because I remember always feeling kind of shy to speak up. Like, I gotta say something stupid. But how did you find your voice, and how did you find your confidence piece as a new ICU nurse doing rounds with, pulmonary fellows and things like that?
Absolutely. And so rounds, I feel like is a good way to practice with your public speaking. Because like with some people who are ICU nurses, they're going to move on to CRNA's school. And so just picture you as the ICU nurse, speaking and leading the rounds and having good practice with, talking about the patient care, and you're talking about it to the physician, the RT, and, the social worker and everybody involved. And those skills are going to carry over, for example, when you're in the OR and like the physician asks you a question and you need to explain to, everybody that what's going on.
Love that.
And so like, it's a mindset thing that I love to prepare for. So I have a rounding script, and that's what, gets me prepared for it. Like, this is what I'm going to say during rounds. This is what's pertinent to the plan of care. And if I need to, back in the day, I would practice it. I would say, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is this, and this is what's important. And so for me, like, it's another like checklist type of thing, a list type of thing that got me prepared for it. And then consistency, doing it every day, speaking out loud, to my peers every day helps with your confidence. Yeah, it really helps with my confidence with speaking in the ICU.
Love that. And I think too, I know, like for me, and I teach my students, by me teaching my students on how I go about it. Because sometimes you do it so much, you kind of forget, at least I do. Like, I don't know how I do it. I just do it, but slowing down and actually teaching others allows you to actually think about what you do, what your strategy is. And one thing I will say, when you're giving a report, whether you're getting a handoff to the ICU nurse that you're dropping off after the OR, for example, or like, talking to the surgeon, or you're attending during the actual case, you have to be able to find your voice and not be afraid of messing up, not be afraid of saying something silly. And what makes it easier is to kind of follow a systems, meaning you kind of, head to toe assessment systems, cardiac, respiratory, hemodynamics. And is there a problem in any of these major areas? And if so, what is it? And then think of some ideas. Don't just present the problem like, oh, there's a problem. Take another step further and say, here's a problem. And these are my thoughts around it. These are my thoughts of how we can maybe fix it, what they maybe need, what we can maybe do. And yes, you're not going to have all the answers 100%. But if you challenge yourself to think like that, I promise you over time, you will start to pick up on it, because then they will educate you on those pieces. And then you'll learn.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. So that's really great. And I think, just the same thing, repetition is key, because again, the more you do it, the better it's going to seem, the less intimidating it's going to seem. And so a lot of this too is giving yourself that grace.
Yeah. You're new to this, so you don't always, have the answers right away, or you don't know how to speak, in rounds right away. So consistency is going to get there. Practice makes perfect, you'll get it.
Would you maybe say, would you talk to your students that you precept? Do you ever say, hey, if you're ever nervous, just come speak with me first on maybe like you, as a new ICU nurse, you can actually present what you want to present on rounds to your preceptor, and they can give feedback. And so that way,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a good idea. And that way you don't feel nervous.
Yeah. Even like just yesterday, I was talking with one of my mentees, and she was like, I don't feel confident with communicating a report. Can we practice? Absolutely, we can practice. Nice. Like this is, and then doing that, it helps you clear up things that you don't understand, like in each system. And so you're like, oh, that's what she was like. Oh, okay. So
yes.
Yeah, she was able to, well,
that's great. And I'm sure they all wish they had preceptors like you. And I get it. Some people tell me these horror stories where they're like, Jenny, I don't have a good preceptor. What's awful to me is some of these health systems seem to take on the role of orienting a new ICU nurse with like one person, right? That's their designated person. But if that person is not really suitable for that role, it can be a really terrible experience. And I've had nurses fail, meaning they don't even pass their residency program, and they're actually forced to go look for their ICU job. Yeah, I've had that. And some of this I truly believe is bullying. And, the person I'm actually thinking about, I I talked to her a lot. So I was like, you're going to be okay. You're going to do this. You are okay. You're doing a great job. And it just really seemed unfair. Right. But more power to her. She went and got another job. She's doing great. She's rocking it. They love her and she's happier. So it's like one of those things, you guys, if this is you, if I'm speaking to you and you're like, I'm struggling, I'm not getting I don't have a good preceptor, I have no one to turn to. Sometimes it's okay to say, well, maybe it's time to look for something else.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because I just went over that with one of my clients who is in my program. And so she actually ended up losing her job from her ICU residency. And so they felt like she wasn't catching on fast enough. She wasn't getting along with her preceptor. That happens. Like, that's something that happens. And so this is where we connected. We helped her gain her confidence, even did a mock interview. She nailed her interview for her new ICU job. And now she's working in another SICU. And so I'm like, and she feels more supported there. And so I'm like,
work out for the better.
It worked out for the better.
Yeah. So I love that we're bringing this up, because clearly it happens more than I think most people are even willing to talk about. Because I think, it's, at least the student I worked with on this, it left her feeling shameful. It left her feeling like she was the problem. It left her feeling like that she wasn't good enough and that maybe she wasn't really cut out for this. And she almost gave up on her CRNA journey because of it. And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, you're not giving up on your journey because of this.
No,
this is a stepping stone and you will be okay. And she was doing all the right things. It just, and it just goes to show the fact that she's thriving in a different ICU and they love her and she's the happiest she's ever been, just goes to show that she was not the problem. It was the unit.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So you guys, it's okay, but not all jobs are created equal. Not all ICUs are created equal. And it's funny, but even back when I reflect on my time, because people are like, oh, the ICU is terrible. It's like toxic. I'm like, well, that could just be your unit. Because even though my ICU it was toxic, but not from the people, it was toxic because of just all the death and dying. That's the way I felt anyways. But like, I love the people. And we were speaking a little bit before we started recording that I started working there as a nurse's aide. And I think if it wasn't for that, I don't know, I think I would have been way more intimidated. But I knew I had a family there. I knew I had people whose shoulders I could cry on. I knew I called them like my mother hens, they were there to watch out for me. And I knew I had support, and that made my experience so like night and day difference. Like I never would have made it. I mean, it was hard enough to deal with what we dealt with, all the death and suffering and uncertainty and being scared and not knowing if you were doing enough to save the patient, et cetera. But the fact that I knew I had such an amazing staff to work with, and I could have taken a position in the SICU. And it was a much colder unit. And even my good friend of mine, we've been friends since we were like sophomore year in nursing school together. But she worked in the SICU. I worked in the MICU, same hospital. Much different experience, way less support. It was a bigger unit, a pretty massive unit, actually. But she even would tell me, she's like, we don't have that kind of relationship that you have in the MICU with your staff. Now, she did say, I think your unit stinks because what you tell me you experience is like, I mean, I think the MICU is a really hard place to work. And she was like, I don't think that, even though we have really sick patients, like what you deal with, all the death and suffering and these chronic comorbidities, just all this stuff. She's like, we at least have some people who make it out, who actually I see them walk out of their ICU unit where you don't. You get them to nursing homes to come back after they get a bed sore, So it was a different type of ICU experience, but like she didn't have the same support that I had. So
support. It's everything. Yeah. Can I tell you about what happened to me when I was an ICU capstone student in nursing school?
Yeah, please.
And so I was at the end, I was ready to graduate, ready to spread my wings, and something happened. So we were in the med room and I was with my preceptor. And this is like kind of the culture of this ICU. I was trying to find my way around the Omnicell. I was looking at, the dose and everything. And one of the ICU nurses, he started singing, I don't know if it's the Jeopardy song. Do, 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 oh, geez. Yeah. And that crushed me as a nursing student. Aww. And it, it crushed my confidence. Yeah. And so, things like that, like the environment.
Like, that's not funny.
But I know, like moving forward, never, ever, ever, seeing things like that being done to students or any other nurses. So it depends, like you said, on the culture and the people in the ICU, the support system you have. So just that's just like a little thing I remember.
Well,
from
thank you
nursing
for sharing
school.
that. Because I think little things like that, and there's not really little, I'm not underplaying that, but I'm also saying like those quote unquote little things that happen throughout your day, they add up.
Mm-hmm.
And over a period of time, you start to think negatively about yourself. Like, I'm just slow. And, even like the students I precept in the OR, they'll tell me like, Jenny, I just feel messy. I feel like I'll never be as good as you. And every time I hear that, it like crushes me. Cause I'm like, don't do that to yourself. And also I want to share the fact that I felt that way too. And I still feel that way some days where I'm like, well, this is a hot mess express today. Like I just, there are some days where the room moves faster than I can physically. And it's just like, well, I'll do the best I can. I don't have 10 hands and I will just do the best. And, but my students feel very overwhelmed when they're in those types of rooms with me. And I don't think they understand how overwhelmed I even am because I'm so used to it. They don't know beneath all that I'm like, holy moly, this is crazy, So I think it's just like, it's like an unspoken thing that humans don't necessarily always speak what they feel. And like you as a nursing student experiencing that, you probably kept quiet.
Oh yeah.
And that nurse who did that to you probably had no idea that it affected you the way it did.
Exactly. He probably, it's funny. And, all the other nurses were laughing and you're having a good time.
Yeah.
But me, I was like, like this is crushing me right now. I don't want to like make it seem like I'm scared and stuff. Yes. So yeah, and definitely.
That's the kind of stuff that I think really eats at people because it adds up. And if it happens more than once, 2 or 3 different times on different occasions, and that's, let's go back to the mindset piece. I mean, that's one of those things where you have to say, you know what? That's them. I'm me. I'm okay. I would never stoop to that level. I'm going to be the bigger person. I would never do that. Going forward, I'm not going to be doing that to anyone. I know that that's not an appropriate way to behave. And like when I did have there were some people in my ICU that were notoriously, not just with me, but like most people, they just weren't nice. Like kind of old, just disgruntled, right? They were like the kind of people who historically eat their young, right?
Yes,
they were. But again, I had worked as a nurse's aide. I worked as a nurse. So I'm like, here we go, and I didn't take it personally because yes, they were rude and they said mean things that made me feel kind of inadequate. But I remember thinking at the same time, and this is maybe, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I do it sometimes. I have someone who's mean to me. I'm like, what friends do you have? And what's your life like outside of work? Because I like my life. I like my friends. I will die for my friends. And can you say that about yourself? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay that you were like that because you're not me. And I choose to not let that affect who I am because I know I like myself and I equally like others and I would never disrespect others. So I kind of just brushed off, that's you. This is me. What you say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words will never hurt me kind of thing. And I kind of just have to adapt that mindset that whatever you say can never hurt me. Like they're just, if you're going, blah, 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 well, that doesn't feel like anything. You're saying, oh, you nailed it. Well, that feels awful because you know what they mean, but you are the one putting feelings and emotions towards those words. So just the opposite, you can shut it off, right? You could say nothing to me because who are you to me in my world outside of here? Nothing. I have my family.
Exactly.
Who love me. So that's all I need. Bye.
Yep. So after this 12 hours of me doing the best that I can, I'm going back to my happy family, my happy daughter. And that's it. Yeah.
And you're going to have coworkers who do love you. Like, so just focus on that, focus on your tribe that you work with and the people that are not your tribe. Just be courteous, respectful, and, let it go.
Yeah. That's the main thing. Just respect each other. That's all I ask.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shakira. This has already been so amazing, this episode.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see what else we're going to talk about. I would love to talk about this because I'm actually surprised to hear that this happened even back in 2017 or 2016.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about how do you handle being tripled in ICU?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And just to give you like a little background. So I was working in Kansas City, Missouri at this time when I was first tripled for the first time in the ICU. And it was such a normal thing there that people, wouldn't really stand up for themselves. The nurse patient ratio was always like 3, sometimes even 4 in the ICU. And so, you would have a trauma patient, you would have a stroke, you would have some heart situations going on, and it was just not safe at all. But it was the norm. I didn't like it at all, but I dealt with it even after expressing to the charge nurse and the management that it wasn't safe. our union was just not strong enough at that point to break free of that culture.
Wow.
And so, everybody had 3 patients, sometimes even 4. And so that was like one of the hugest issues. And I think that like Missouri is one of those states that's kind of slower to promote patient safety. And so fast forward 2017, when we moved to California, the laws were much more strict. I would only have 1 patient or 2 patients in the ICU. And I really felt like I could stand up for myself if, the charge nurse would try to give me a 3rd patient. No, the answer was no. And like what gave me the confidence to do that is when I went to Sacramento with my union, and we like supported the Senate Bill 227 for the patient safety. And, we went in the courtroom and we stood up for it. And so that bill became a law. Awesome. And, that actually, it'll build the hospital if situations like that happen again. Like the first time it happens, it'll be 30,000. The second time it'll be like 60,000. And so that's what like changes it. I guess it kind of hits the hospital in the pocket, and that's what changes and makes change. And so, from there on out, I that's where I found my confidence to say, no, I'm not taking a 3rd patient. We fought for this, and it's saving myself, it's saving my license and the patient safety. So no, I'm not taking 3 patients. Yeah. And so I guess that's kind of like the difference between like being tripled and where you are in the country and things like that.
Well, it's really good to know that you can reach out to your union, and you mentioned you can actually go to your union's website and there's a form.
Yes. There's a form that you can fill out. It's a staffing objection form, and you fill that out before you take the assignment. You take the assignment, but if something happens, that covers you. And you can find that document on your unit somewhere. You just have to ask where it is. So try to connect with your union rep or go online, and that's where you can find it. And it saves you. Like even when we had that COVID surge in like 2020, when all of the laws, like our governor, he took the laws away for the patient safety because we all had 3 patients and the hospitals were filling up with COVID patients. So we all had to like dig in and help. And so now in California, we all had 3 ICU patients for propofol, fentanyl, Versed, and Nimbex, everything. And it was scary, but it was happening. Right. And so you can fill out, we did, and I would fill out the staffing objection before my shift started. And, that in case anything would happen, that would save me and my license.
That's
absolutely.
No. And thank you so much for bringing that up. For those of you guys who are not part of a union, I mean, that's obviously, I know that does exist as well, but you still need to try to reach out. And you guys, and even we do it in our field in anesthesia, but contacting your lawmakers that are in your Senate. I mean, writing a letter goes a long way. Having people sign it and petition it. I mean, that's how you get their attention. They don't know. They're not in healthcare, but would they want their loved one going to be tripled assignment when they're on their death's door? No. So bring awareness to the problem by contacting your state representative. You can, I know you can find out who your state representative is by a simple Google search. So reach out to them, write them a basic, very short letter, and have a nurses sign a petition. Get everyone together on your unit, sign a petition, let them know this is a problem. There's always something that could be done. It might not happen right away, but you're never going to be able to make the change happen if you don't first recognize that there's a problem and bring it to the state level.
Yeah, absolutely.
National level, really, it needs to be national level.
Yeah.
Starts with the state first, and then they build up from there.
Yes. And the ratios have gone back to normal. That was like a temporary thing, but still, you have those options to protect yourself. And then like another thing that helped me through it was like the mindset of it all. I'm here to do my best, the best that I can in this 12 hours. We all have 3 patients. Just do the best you can, while you're here. And then, you'll be home, back to your family and everything. So the mindset that kind of like, all you can do is your best, you know? And so that helped me get through it too. Okay.
And obviously the fact that you probably already came into that situation very well organized. But it sounds like the system, as far as having the report sheet and kind of knowing, how to be present during ground rounds and kind of how to organize your flow of your day is really important. I suggest that for all of you, to really making sure you're asking these questions to your preceptors, how they organize their day, just to kind of gauge how they do it. It's going to be really the best way to kind of start off, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we also mentioned too, we actually talked about physician rounds, but I guess let's talk a little bit about teamwork in the ICU. Because I know for me, that was a huge part of time management, is a lot of delegation, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So let's kind of touch on that too.
Yeah. Just to shed some light on teamwork. I wrote down some questions because, some people don't think about EVS as being in our team. So I wrote down some questions. So how would our ICU rooms look like if we didn't have our awesome EVS staff, to first of all, prepare our rooms for us? How would our day go if pharmacy didn't prepare our drips on time? Things like that. Like, pharmacy is a part of our team, EVS, the physicians, the RTs. What if the RTs weren't able to calibrate our ventilators? Like, what if the nurses, weren't there to efficiently run, be there for the patients? So everybody is a part of the team. Always ask for help. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask your resource nurse, ask your charge nurse if you're feeling like you might be behind, and ask ahead of time. Don't let things linger. And so, that's going to keep everything on task. It's safer for the patients. Just go ahead. If you feel like, I'm going to be in here doing something for a while, go ahead and ask, someone out at the nurse's station if they can keep an eye out, if they can keep an ear out for your other critical patient. Listen out for the ventilators, the IV pumps, because they could be levofed running. It could be something that's vital to keeping them alive. Listen out for the bed alarms. Listen out for the cardiac monitors. Just ask for help. And so that's the only thing that I would say about teamwork. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Right.
100%. And I love how you mentioned too, seeking that out early. That's a huge concept, you guys. It's even for CRNA school, when you're struggling, you have to be proactive with what you need, meaning don't wait till the problem happens to seek help. Anticipate the problem arising or brewing and then get help at that point. Because once a problem actually occurs, once a mistake actually happens, it's really hard to actually mediate it at that point. And, I routinely remember, when I started in the ICU, it was weird going from a nurse's aide to a nurse asking the same nurse's aides that I was working with as a nurse's aide to do things for me. Oh, hi there. Actually, can you go do this and do that and do that and this and this? Thank you. But it's necessary. And you pointed out that there's so many moving parts to one day at work. It's not just nurses. It's not just nurses' aides. It's, the housekeeping and the pharmacy and the RT and the physicians and the unit clerk even. I mean, my gosh.
Yes, absolutely.
Find things you need. And there's always someone there to be a resource and to essentially help you do your job efficiently. But you have to know when to speak up and when to ask for certain things and not be afraid to do that. And you can always do it with a smile. And some days you're going to be needy and you say, well, I owe you a coffee. I'm calling out, you're banging at your door every second, but that's what you're there for. And that's what they're there for. And I think everyone understands you're going to have days where you're going to be more reliant on your, not your peer, your coworker, but your next door neighbor. We had our ICU was actually, we didn't even have any doors. They have a much nicer unit, I'm sure now, but we just had curtains. It was just literally a big unit with curtains. But it really allowed us to be really close to one another because literally we had our computer parked outside the curtain. And then the next nurse was literally just a pane of glass away. So there was not much separation in our ICU, but it allowed us to be very close. And so if I needed to give my full blown attention to this one patient because they got unstable, I would actually use my neighbor and say, hey, can you watch out for this patient? They have a problem. I need to be in this room. They would be happy to do so because same thing when the roles are reversed and they need your help. They would come to watch my patient, And so I think don't be afraid to do that. And sometimes you're like, well, my pod partners aren't the best, but you'll have to find it within you to say, I know they're going to give me gruff. They're going to roll their eyes, but I'm still going to ask anyways. And honestly, if they tell you no, that's when you march your butt to the charge nurse and let them know, hey, I needed help. I follow my resources. They told me X, Y, Z, just so you know, I'm not trying to but I want you to know that this is a problem, that we're not working together as a team. And let's try to figure out how we can mediate that going forward.
Absolutely.
That's the person, right? And how they get disgruntled about that, that's their problem, not yours. Like, you're doing the right thing by addressing it, because if they want to keep working in that unit, they need to figure out how to work as a team too.
Yes, absolutely. And I forgot to mention one thing you can do on most monitors. You can select one other patient view so that when you're in your one ICU room, you can see your other patient's vital signs too. Yeah, so if you see that they went tacky, you could just stick your head out and say, hey, can you go check on them and make sure that they're okay, because they were assigned to them before this, and so that's another like quick tip. If you see the blood pressure drop, just stick your head out and ask, hey, can you go check on so-and-so? If you see the O2 sat drop, just ask somebody, go check on them. And so that's another like a good tip that you can use in the ICU.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Make sure you're watching at all times. Yeah. And there's some times too where maybe you have to step away from the bedside to go make a phone call. I remember arguing, we didn't have portable phones. I don't know if they do now, but literally we had to go to a desk with a phone that was tied to a station. But that was stressful. Sometimes you had to make these phone calls that when your patient was unstable. So either I would delegate someone else to do the phone call for me. Or if someone was already there with me, maybe. And I remember the one time I actually had this happen to me, I was a brand new ICU nurse, like had not even in the ICU on my own for more than a week. And it was middle of the night. The patient I knew was having a stroke based on the symptoms. And I had my other nurse from the bed right next to me who was way more seasoned than I was, and was like, hey, this is my suspicion. Please go in the room. I want to make sure she has a nurse by the bedside. We got the ICU team at the bedside. They were not, this patient was actually transferred off our service. So, but I'm like, everyone go in that room, hands on deck. I got to call her service because this is something that's really wrong. And then no sooner than that happened, then, obviously kind of the whole Cushing's triad happened, and it ended up not being a very good thing, but it was one of those things where I was glad. I was like, no, get your butt in my room right now. There's problems. I need to figure out what to do. I need to call her actual medical team. Even though at that point I'm like, well, it's way more appropriate for our ICU team to be here right now because this is a big deal. So yeah, it's just making sure you're utilizing your coworkers. And if you have a more seasoned nurse, have them look at your patient. Because I'd never seen that before. I thought I knew it was wrong. I'm like, well, but I said, hey, Ashley, go in my room and do your neuro assessment because I want to see if you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking. And sure enough, she was like, oh my gosh, yeah. She's like, this is bad. And I was like, okay. So
you stuck with your intuition. Yeah. You knew something was wrong.
Yeah. Versus like, oh, it'll probably be okay. No, I was like, I want you to go look at her.
Yeah.
This is not right.
Times, I
knew, but this doesn't feel good. And so,
exactly.
Call on your seasoned staff to kind of confirm your thinking.
Yes. Yeah. And that's totally okay. Even, sometimes you might have seasoned nurses come ask you to help with technology, for example, like, I don't know how to do this, and so that's where teamwork comes in. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this has been so full of so many gold nuggets. Well, is there anything else? Actually, Shakira, let's tell people where they can find you. You mentor new ICU nurses, or even just not even new nurses, but nurses who are new to the ICU. So I'd love to
absolutely
get in touch with you.
Sure. So I have a website, and it's www.icunursementor.com. And I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram is Shakira_BSN.RN.CCRN.
Okay, so, awesome. And I will make sure I link those in the show notes below. So if you're like me and you're like, I just want a link to click, I'll make sure I get those links for you guys. But this has been a really valuable episode. And I think a lot of it, we're going to make sure also we're going to share the report sheet that you have as well.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, just I think just the overall takeaway is, I think time management will come with time, but organization is really a big part of time management, and also kind of getting a system, like you mentioned a couple different times, and then repetition and consistency and feedback from others. liquid gold today. So yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You'll be coming back, I'm sure, down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next week for next week's episode. As always, I appreciate your loyalty for tuning in. If you wouldn't mind leaving me a review, I appreciate you so very much. And thank you again, Kyra. It was so nice to have you.
Oh, thank you, Jenny.
Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.